While you are sitting perfectly still in an air-conditioned room, your hands begin to sweat. Your heart rate is normal, the temperature is cool, yet your skin feels like you have just run a marathon. Most people look at this as a minor medical inconvenience or a flawed genetic trait, but they are looking at the wrong system. Your skin is not failing you. Your brain is giving you away. This sudden moisture is actually a physical transmission of an invisible biological crisis happening deep inside your skull. It is the direct signature of a hyper-reactive neural processor running at maximum voltage. Your excessive sweating is not telling a story about your skin. It is revealing a dark, powerful truth about how your brain handles reality. Segment 1. The hypothalamus, the master commander in extreme neural sensitivity. Imagine your brain as a hyper-advanced quantum computer, a machine capable of processing millions of bits of environmental data every single second. At the absolute center of this organic supercomputer sits a tiny diamond-sized structure known as the hypothalamus. In textbook biology, the hypothalamus is casually dismissed as the body's internal thermostat, a simple mechanical switch that keeps your core temperature balanced at 37 degrees Celsius. But in the theater of shadow psychology, the hypothalamus is something far more profound. It is the grand translator. It is the exact bridge where your abstract, invisible thoughts are instantly converted into physical, tangible reality. When you possess a brain that is hardwired for deep analytical processing, your hypothalamus does not function like a normal thermostat. It operates like a military-grade radar system that is permanently set to maximum sensitivity. In a standard individual, this internal sensor requires a significant shift in external temperature to trigger a cooling response. If the room gets hot, they sweat. It is a simple linear equation. But for a highly sensitive brain, the equation is chaotic and nonlinear. The hyper-reactive hypothalamus does not just scan the air temperature, it scans the emotional atmosphere. It measures the micro-shifts in social tension, the invisible weight of an unspoken expectation, and the psychological gravity of a complex problem. To understand this phenomenon, we must look at how the brain distributes its processing power. When you are presented with an overwhelming cognitive task, or when you enter a room filled with subtle psychological hostility, a normal brain registers the event and moves on. But a hyper-reactive brain initiates a process known as deep scanning. Your neural pathways begin firing at an exponential rate. Your thoughts are not just linear sentences, they are vast multidimensional webs of prediction and analysis. This immense computational load generates an immense amount of internal friction. In the world of physics, high computational power always produces heat. The same law applies to the human mind. As your neurons fire continuously to solve a crisis or protect your social status, the local temperature within certain brain structures begins to tick upward. The hypersensitive hypothalamus detects this microscopic surge in internal heat long before your conscious mind even realizes you are stressed. It interprets this internal spike in computational energy as a threat to your homeostasis. It assumes that your system is about to overheat under the sheer weight of your own thoughts. To protect your delicate neural architecture from this cognitive friction, the hypothalamus pulls the emergency lever. It fires a massive electrical command down the brainstem, bypassing your conscious ego entirely, and orders your sweat glands to open the floodgates. This leads us to a profound cognitive twist. The next time you find yourself sweating in a crucial moment, realize that your body is not panicking. Your body is executing a high-level cooling protocol designed to keep your master processor from burning out. You are not experiencing a physical malfunction. You are witnessing a premium machine running a heavy simulation at the highest possible frame rate. Segment 2. The sympathetic nervous system and the fight-or-flight response in the shadows. To truly grasp why this neural command manifests so aggressively through your skin, we must journey into the darker, older regions of our evolutionary design. Deep within your nervous system lies a dual-engine mechanism, the autonomic nervous system, divided into two opposing forces. The parasympathetic, which governs rest and digestion, and the sympathetic, which controls the famous fight-or-flight response. For the individual with an easily triggered sweat response, the sympathetic nervous system is not a sleeping giant. It is a highly trained sniper, standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for the slightest movement in the shadows. This permanent state of hypervigilance is directly tied to the evolutionary survival strategies of our ancestors. Thousands of years ago, a human being whose nervous system was slow to react was a human being that became prey. The survivors were those whose brains could detect a threat before it fully materialized. When a primitive hunter heard a faint rustle in the tall grass, their brain could not afford to wait for visual confirmation. The amygdala, the alarm system of the mind, would instantly signal the sympathetic nervous system to flood the body with adrenaline and cortisol. But why did this survival mechanism involve sweating? This is where evolution reveals its brilliant pragmatic design. When your ancestors had to fight a predator or flee through a jagged landscape, two immediate physical adjustments were mandatory for survival: First, the muscles needed to be pre-cooled. If a hominid started running for their life with dry skin, their core temperature would skyrocket within minutes, leading to rapid heat exhaustion and certain death. By triggering an anticipatory sweat response, the brain coated the skin in moisture ahead of time, utilizing the physics of evaporative cooling to keep the muscles operating at peak performance during the upcoming sprint. Second, moisture on the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet increased friction and grip. In the ancient world, a dry hand slipped off a tree branch. A slightly damp hand locked onto it, allowing a desperate human to climb out of danger. In the modern era, the saber-toothed tigers are gone, but the architecture of your ancient brain remains entirely unchanged. The sympathetic nervous system cannot distinguish between a physical predator in a prehistoric jungle and a demanding email from your boss in a modern corporate office. It cannot tell the difference between a life-threatening ambush and a high-stakes public presentation. When the cognitive load increases, or when you perceive a hidden social threat, the amygdala fires the exact same ancient alarm. The sympathetic nervous system reacts with the same primal ferocity. The tragic consequence for the modern intellectual is that this hyperactivation happens continuously, beneath the surface of conscious awareness. If you have an overactive sympathetic system, your brain is treating daily life as a perpetual zone of combat. Every complex decision, every difficult conversation, and every moment of deep introspection is interpreted by your biological machinery as a matter of life and death. Your body is continuously preparing for a physical battle that never comes. The adrenaline flows, the blood vessels constrict, and the sweat glands pour moisture onto your skin, leaving you physically exhausted and emotionally drained by a war that was fought entirely inside your own mind. Segment 3. Emotional sweating and high emotional intelligence (EQ) deep processing. The physical manifestation of sweating is often misconstrued as a sign of weakness, social awkwardness, or a lack of self-control. When your palms slick with moisture during a high-stakes negotiation, or when beads of sweat form on your forehead during an uncomfortable social interaction, the dominant cultural narrative tells you that you are failing to maintain composure. But if we peel back the layers of superficial judgment and look through the lens of neuropsychology, we discover a striking paradox. This specific form of sweating, known scientifically as emotional sweating, is an indicator of deep cognitive processing and a highly developed framework for emotional intelligence. To understand why, we must look at the mechanical distribution of our sweat glands. Your body possesses two completely distinct types of cooling infrastructure, the eccrine glands and the apocrine glands. Eccrine glands are distributed uniformly across your entire body and are triggered primarily by physical heat or metabolic exertion. Their function is purely mechanical. Apocrine glands, however, are densely concentrated in highly specific, emotionally expressive zones. The palms of your hands, the soles of your feet, your underarms, and your face. These glands are completely indifferent to the weather outside. Instead, they are hardwired directly to the limbic system, the ancient emotional core of the human brain. When a person with high emotional intelligence enters a social space, their brain does not just perceive surface-level interactions. It initiates an incredibly dense subconscious process known as micro-expression auditing. Without even realizing it, your brain is actively reading the dilated pupils of the person across from you, decoding the subtle, tense shifts in their vocal tone, and analyzing the microgestures of their body language. This is the foundation of high empathy and advanced social intuition. Your mind is constructing a highly complex real-time map of the emotional reality surrounding you. This level of deep processing demands an enormous amount of neural energy. As the hypothalamus, amygdala, and the prefrontal cortex work together to navigate these intricate social dynamics, they release a wave of neurotransmitters, specifically acetylcholine. This chemical signal bypasses the body's physical thermal sensors and binds directly to the receptors of your apocrine glands. The sudden moisture on your hands or face is not a sign that you are afraid. It is the physical proof that your brain is actively engaged in deep psychological calculations. It is the biological tax paid by an intellect that refuses to remain blind to the subtle undercurrents of human connection. A classic historical testament to this phenomenon can be found in the early mid-20th century development of the polygraph test, pioneered by mechanics of forensic psychology. The core mechanism of the lie detector does not measure lies because a lie has no distinct biological shape. Instead, it measures the galvanic skin response, the microsweep produced on the fingertips when a human mind experiences the acute cognitive friction of deception or hidden guilt. When a suspect is asked a critical question, their conscious mind may remain completely calm, their voice smooth, their eyes steady. But if their brain recognizes the psychological danger of the question, the limbic system immediately triggers a microburst of emotional sweat on the palms. The machine simply records the physical echo of a hidden mental storm. For the highly sensitive individual, daily life is a continuous polygraph test. Your hyper-aware brain detects psychological friction in everyday scenarios, and your skin faithfully reports the depth of your internal engagement. The long-term consequence of this hyperattunement is a state of chronic psychological fatigue known as empathy burnout. When your nervous system treats every social interaction as a high-fidelity data stream, you are constantly expending cognitive capital. The highly sensitive individual does not just walk through a crowd, they absorb the crowd. Over time, the continuous activation of emotional sweating serves as a precursor to sensory overload, leaving you profoundly depleted at the end of ordinary social encounters, simply because your brain performed a marathon of psychological calculations while everyone else was just standing still. Segment 4. The metabolic price, glucose consumption and homeostatic exhaustion. Every action in the universe requires a transfer of energy, and the human brain is the most expensive piece of evolutionary real estate in existence. While accounting for a mere 2% of your total body weight, your brain ruthlessly consumes more than 20% of your body's total energy budget, operating primarily on a delicate currency of glucose and oxygen. When you push this biological processor into states of high focus, deep worry, or creative obsession, its energy demands do not rise linearly, they spike exponentially. For those with a hyperreactive sweat response, this cognitive surge triggers an internal energy crisis known as homeostatic exhaustion. To understand this internal drain, we must look at the concept of metabolic friction. When you are deep within a state of intense mental execution, whether you are writing complex code, resolving a structural crisis, or navigating an intense emotional conflict, millions of neurons are firing across your cortical network simultaneously. This intense cellular activity requires a massive influx of glucose to fuel the sodium-potassium pumps that allow neural communication. As the brain burns through its fuel supply at an accelerated rate, it generates a substantial thermodynamic byproduct, heat. In a standard machine, cooling is a passive byproduct of design. In the human body, cooling is an active, highly aggressive metabolic process. The moment your hypothalamus detects the thermal rise caused by intense cognitive load, it forces the body to divert precious physical resources to manage the crisis. Blood flow must be redirected from your internal organs toward the surface of your skin through a process called vasodilation. Your sweat glands must actively pump fluids out of the dermis to facilitate evaporative cooling. This means that while your brain is burning massive amounts of glucose to think, your body is simultaneously burning massive amounts of energy just to keep the brain from overheating. This creates a brutal biological double taxation. You are expending energy to process reality, and you are expending an equal amount of energy to cool the processor. This explains a phenomenon that confounds many intellectual professionals: the profound, bone-deep exhaustion felt after an entire day of sitting perfectly still at a desk. You did not lift a single heavy object. You did not walk a mile, yet your body feels as though it has been subjected to hard labor. Your muscles are weak, your willpower is entirely depleted, and your mind is clouded by a thick layer of mental fog. This state of exhaustion is the direct result of a drop in systemic glucose and a disruption of your cellular fluid balance. When you sweat continuously, due to cognitive load, you are not just losing water. You are expending vital electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and magnesium. These minerals are the essential chemical conductors that allow electrical signals to travel through both your muscles and your brain. When they are drained through your skin as a consequence of mental overexertion, your neural processing speed plummets. Your brain enters a low-power mode to preserve what little homeostasis it has left. The long-term system consequence of ignoring this cycle is chronic cognitive fatigue, a state where your brain, tired of constantly fighting the internal heat of its own thoughts, begins to systematically downregulate your ambition, your focus, and your creativity simply to protect itself from the physical cost of thinking. Segment 5. The paradox of focus, the flow state, and cognitive overheating. There is a unique psychological zone that artists, programmers, and elite thinkers chase above all else, the flow state. Coined by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, flow is that magical realm of optimal experience where time seems to warp, your self-consciousness completely vanishes, and your execution becomes utterly effortless. You are completely fused with the task at hand. But for the individual with a hyper-reactive brain, entering this peak cognitive state comes with a profound physical paradox. The sharper your focus, the more your body begins to sweat. When you enter a deep state of flow, your brain undergoes a radical structural shift called transient hypofrontality. Your prefrontal cortex, the loud, critical, self-conscious part of your brain, temporarily powers down, allowing your deeper, faster, implicit processing networks to take control. This allows for rapid-fire pattern recognition and brilliant intuitive leaps. However, because you are executing tasks at such a high velocity, your brain's metabolic demand does not drop, it concentrates. The neural pathways responsible for focus, such as the locus coeruleus and the dorsal attention network, are firing with laser-like precision. As these specific networks operate at peak capacity, they release a continuous stream of norepinephrine, a neurotransmitter designed to sharpen your senses and lock your attention onto the target. But norepinephrine has an immediate systemic side effect. It acts as a direct chemical stimulant on your autonomic nervous system. Even though your mind feels perfectly serene, calm, and blissfully detached from the world, your underlying biology is experiencing a massive surge of localized adrenaline. This creates a fascinating illusion. To the outside observer, you are merely sitting at a desk, staring intensely at a notebook or a computer screen, completely motionless. But thermodynamically, your internal systems are running at redline. Your core temperature creeps upward as your cellular engines burn fuel to sustain this profound state of concentration. The hypersensitive hypothalamus immediately registers this subtle internal friction. It recognizes that while the conscious mind is blissfully unaware of its own physical existence, the underlying machinery is heating up. To preserve this state of genius and prevent cognitive degradation from thermal stress, the brain quietly deploys its physical cooling mechanism. This explains the ultimate paradox of the creative intellectual. You are not stressed, you are not anxious, and you are completely enjoying your work. Yet you look down to find your notebook smudged with sweat or your shirt damp. It is the physical manifestation of a beautiful hidden truth. Your body is working overtime in the background to build a perfectly air-conditioned sanctuary where your mind can build its greatest ideas. The next time you feel that sudden wave of moisture on your skin during an intense moment, change your narrative. Do not look at it as a flaw, a social curse, or a sign of panic. Reframe it for what it truly is. The physical proof of an exceptionally sharp, deeply empathetic, and high-voltage brain operating at its absolute limit. Your skin is simply the exhaust pipe of a premium psychological engine. To prevent this powerful internal engine from burning through its fuel, you must learn to actively manage your biological parameters. Start keeping your working environment slightly colder than average to relieve your hypothalamus of its physical cooling duties. Supplement your deep focus sessions with targeted electrolytes to replace the vital conductors lost through your skin. And most importantly, listen to your sweat. It is the earliest indicator that your subconscious mind is running a heavy simulation. If your brain is built to run this hot, your only job is to give it the space, the fuel, and the cooling it needs to create without burning out. What is your brain telling you right now? When do you find yourself overheating the most? Leave a comment below, let us decode the shadow patterns of your biology together, and subscribe to stay tuned for our next dive into the hidden machinery of the human mind.